Hello, Serge here from the Backyard Driving Range. All right, question came into customer service. This one's from Edward Bolano, and Edward says, in reference to the daily, that why a vertical swing is better. Edward says, great explanation. I constantly fight the overswing, typically because of trying to hit it harder and further. My question today is in starting the transition downswing, is the bump a voluntary thought into action, or should it happen as an involuntary swing reaction? Ed Bolano. Boy, that's a very deep question here. First off, I'd like to comment about the fact that yes, a lot of people overswing because they're trying to hit the ball too hard and a lot farther, further, whichever term you prefer. All right, and that's a big issue. But we got the scientific data that proves parallel swing. The club is in even if the speed of a three-quarter swing versus a parallel swing are longer, and even if the swing speed was the same at impact, the long swing was in negative acceleration that the player made, and when he shortened it up, the short swing was in positive acceleration. But for the most part, that's a rare occurrence. Most people that were long swingers, and we shortened them up in the studies we've done, they increased club head speed. All right, so hopefully if we can get that message across enough that people will start wanting to believe science and say, okay, if I want to hit it farther, I need to be shorter. And why? Because once you go to parallel, you got to pull it up before it comes down. So you're pulling it that way, and the speed is going that way and your brain says, hey, yo, we got a problem. The club's going that way and the ball's down here. And so you got to grab it, stop it, control it, and go get it. But in three-quarters, all you do is when you come up, you just transition, you swing up to the tee finish. So if you go to parallel, you basically go what? You got an up, down, a four-segment backswing. And when you go to three-quarters, all you have is up, down. You got rid of two segments. You got, technically, we can call that, you got rid of two bad angles. Okay? So, but getting back to the question, is the bump a voluntary thought to action, or should it happen as an involuntary swing reaction? I think that anytime anybody takes up something new, it has to become an active thought to do it. All right. So if anyone's been a rotational swinger, okay, if anybody's been a rotational swinger and they train themselves to get up to the top and to just take the knee and the hip and turn real hard to pull the arms down, and you're going to become a bumper. You're going to get in the surge swing, the peak performance swing. You're going to get up here and you're going to do the bump. That's a totally different thought. That's a totally different move. So the brain has to be reprogrammed. Remember, I say there's no such thing as muscle memory. It's mental memory. The brain tells everything to do. And that's why I kind of like these terms you're using about involuntary thought to action, or should it be a voluntary thought to action or an involuntary swing reaction. Either way, you're placing the emphasis on the mind telling the body what to do, telling the muscles what to do. And I like that because that's the way it is. There's no such thing as muscle memory. So I think anytime you're learning a new routine or learning new stuff, it's just so different than dancing, learning a new step or whatever it is. Your brain, you have to get your brain to understand what's trying to happen, because knowledge and understanding equals commitment and conviction. So first off, you got to know what you want to do, why you want to do it, and then how to do it. And that's what I always cover in everything we teach, because that's how I started figuring a lot of things out. I ask, what has to happen? Why does it happen? How do you make it happen? That is part of knowledge. If you don't know that, how can you do it? And ultimately, when you answer those three things, what happens, why, and how, once you understand and you believe all that and you understand it, the how, then it's the commitment is easy because you know it's correct. So you have to get into practicing. And routines would be like the bump, skipping rocks on a lake. You don't skip a rock by doing that, because even if you try to skip a rock doing that, it opens the shoulders, it throws your hand out there, and the rock is going to get thrown in the lake somewhere out there. Okay, but if you skip a rock, it just goes. So that's a good mental image we use. Another one is standing at door jam, get close, and just practice that. And what happens is you see that happens. The hips run away, the spine tilts backwards, the head goes backwards just a little bit, which is going to allow the arms to straighten up at impact. And when they straighten up, and then as soon as the head goes back, it comes up. That's what I call the dipsy doodle. And that's the head goes back and straight up, and that's what allows, as I just said, the arms, both of the arms to straighten out, and we're behind the ball at impact. I have a statement: the head can never ever move left in the swing for right-hander, or right in the swing, or forward in the swing would be the safest way, no matter what side the ball is on. The head should never move forward in the swing until after impact. And today, almost everybody's playing in front of it. So your brain has to simulate all of these actions. The timing. Timing is the proper sequential movements of the parts of the body. So it has to change. It has to know when it's going to do and know when it's going to happen and how it's going to happen. So if you've been rotational, you have to be changing the how. What has to happen? Why does it happen? How do you make it happen? You put those three together. So you're going to have to mentally change that and do practice swings, do drills and stuff like I just gave you 2 of them, the skipping the rocks and the door jam, and retrain that. Once the training is set in there and your brain has it and knows the proper sequence, the timing sequence to do all of this stuff, and in some cases, and scientifically it's called the kinematic chain is correct, and how do things function in the order in which they function. Once it's got that down, then it's just a matter of you having to monitor it to make sure that it keeps happening. Now, I've had the bump down for 30 years now or more. I think I even had it when I was a junior, because when I was a junior golfer and I started playing, I had a 3/4 swing and I didn't make a big turn because it was 3/4. I just kind of had it. I lost it when I tried to turn pro and went out seeking more distance and started doing all the things that happened. And how did I develop that swing? There was no pro where I was at as a junior golfer. We had a driving range, but there was no balls. You had to hit your own balls. I hit thousands of balls, experiment with things until I got something to work. And what the biggest thing I wanted was, I wanted to look at a flag or a target, look at it, come back, hit the ball, and when I looked up, the ball was going at that target. And so at that time, I was more interested in the results, not the distance. But when I turned pro, and now I'm getting up against the really big boys, and I got to as low as a +3 handicap, and was a pretty darn good player. And when I played against the big guys who were bigger and stronger than me, and I tried to keep up with them, the next thing you know, I'm lifting a foot, making a big turn, going to parallel, and guess what happened? Pain in the back that never went away. Okay, except most cases, December, January, February, winter when I wasn't playing golf, and as soon as I started playing and practicing again in early March, late February, early March, when things started breaking, the weather started breaking, boom, the pain's back, and that's when I finally said, hey, it's got to be the golf swing. But I did more of it than just go back to my old swing. I started studying. I was a PGA pro then, and I had to take courses for my PGA, the education courses I had to take. And I just one day just said, hey, I started asking questions. What has to happen, why, and how? And I started getting, and then when the answers didn't jive, and I finally came to the fact of what I did to not swing where I went to the point where the pain didn't hurt me. I was back to 3/4 and vertical again. And then that's when Dr. Armstrong walked into my life after I wrote my first book, Golf Plain and Simple. All right, from then on, it's you know the story. I just keep doing. I find more. I got a whole slew of technical experts, advisors, doctors and OTs and PTs and optometrists and ophthalmologists and all the different sciences, health and nutrition. Wayne Coolidge, my director of fitness, health and nutrition, and we just go and find the answers. But the answer here is you're retraining your mind. It's retraining a new timing sequence to hit the ball. But even after you get it, every now and then you might have to go into that mental mode and recheck out in your mind if it's correct. Videotape yourself, look at your shadow and see. And you might have to go back into that mental timing mode again of keeping it active. In other words, your involuntary has kind of just lost its timing or whatever, and you got to figure out the reasons why. Could it be setup? Could it be bad alignment? Could it be the swing getting a little bit too long, turning a little too much? Once you get all of that back and you figure what that's out and you start straightening it out again, you should be able to go from that voluntary position into that involuntary swing reaction once you get the timing sequence or the kinematic chain back. So you got to be in action mode to learn something new, and then once you've pretty much mastered that technique, then you can stay more in involuntary mode until it starts to wither away or whatever. You got to find out what's wrong, make the corrections, and then once things are smooth again and cruising right on down the road, then you can go back into that involuntary mode, because it's all happening. The brain is sending the right messages, the right time, the right things for everything to happen. But remember, it's usually set up, started by alignment, that's going to cause these things to start to break down. That's why it's a never-ending battle to get into proper setup position, to activate the muscles properly so we can make the proper peak performance golf swing. 3/4 limited turn, so you can hit it more solid, straight, and longer. Play better golf by shooting lower scores. That's it for the search for today, and I'll be talking with you all again soon.